All right, let's get started. I'm Eric Blank, and this is the Commissioners' weekly meeting for November 29th, 2023. Commissioner Plant, you ready to approve the consent agenda as presented, or any preliminary comments?
No comments, and yes, I am.
Commissioner Gilman.
Good morning. I also would vote to approve the consent agenda.
As would I. Proceeding number 23A-0509T, Mr. Branson.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Daryl Branson, Commission Advisor in the Telecom Programs section. This item before you today is a request for a emergency telephone charge increase filed by the Aspen-Pitkin County Emergency Telephone Service Authority Board, which I'll just call Pitkin County for short going forward. On October 16th of 2023, statute requires commission approval for emergency telephone charge rates in excess of the threshold established annually by the commission, which is currently $2.05 for the calendar year 2024. Pitkin County requests an increase to $4 per user per month, which is a 100% increase from their current rate of $2. This is Pitkin's third application with the commission for an increase to its 911 surcharge. The commission previously approved Pitkin County to increase its surcharge from $1.25 to $2 in 2019. Pitkin funds one public safety answering point, namely the Pitkin County Regional Emergency Dispatch Center. The PSAP, as they're called, serves 4 law enforcement agencies, 4 fire departments, and 1 EMS agency, as well as Mountain Rescue Aspen. Staff estimates that the approval of the requested surcharge rate of $4 would amount to roughly an additional $4,007,100 in revenues from 911 surcharges over the next 5 years, and an average increase of $801,500 per year, which would fund 3 primary projects: upgrading their computer-aided dispatch system and related cloud-based systems, updating infrastructure to support 3 smaller satellite centers to address single points of entry and staffing challenges, and building a resilient network that incorporates fiber, microwave, and satellite technology, facilitating partnerships with software as a solution providers, and ensuring that emergency services continue uninterrupted during network disruptions or disasters. The capital expenses proposed by Pitkin over the next 5 years amount to roughly $6.1 million, which exceeds the amount that is projected to be raised by the increase in the emergency telephone charge rate. No interventions or public comments were filed. Staff's analysis of the application finds that the proposed expenses, the applicant will, the applicant will exhaust its funding in 2025 without an increase. With an increase, the applicant should be solvent through 2027, although it may need to secure additional funding in 2028. The tests traditionally applied by staff in analysis of emergency telephone charge increases consist of: 1, whether the increase in funds are necessary in order to fund the proposed expenses; 2, whether the proposed expenses are allowed by statute for 911 funds; and 3, whether the application is sufficiently documented. Commission staff notes that Pitkin County is in compliance with 2911-102 paragraph 4, which requires governing bodies to comply with the commission's annual data collection. Staff also notes that Pitkin provides its citizens with several advanced services that are tracked by commission staff, those being text and 911 service, live foreign language interpretation for 911 callers who do not speak English, and emergency medical dispatch protocols, including pre-arrival instructions for medical calls. Commission staff also notes that this item was tabled from the November 22nd Commissioner Weekly meeting. After meeting with each of you individually, Commissioner Plant stated at that meeting that he would like to have a discussion about whether applications such as this one that are primarily directed toward capital expenses could be approved for a temporary period rather than indefinitely. Ms. McLaughlin with Commission Counsel is also here to answer any legal questions you may have regarding this approach. And with this, I will pause for your discussion, or I can provide a recommendation.
Yeah, why don't you provide a recommendation, and we'll come back with questions, comments, discussion, or a vote.
Based on the tests applied by commission staff to these applications, staff finds that the proposed expenses in the application are allowed under statute and that the need for the requested emergency telephone charge rate to pay for those proposed expenses is sufficiently documented. Staff recommends that the application be granted. However, based on your discussion, if you decide that you wish to grant it for a temporary period of time, then we can potentially accommodate that.
Commissioner Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Branson. As Mr. Branson mentioned, I had a concern not about the funding of this and the approval of this funding. I think that they've met all of the statutory requirements and that we should go ahead and approve it. My concern was more around the fact that this approval is for a capital expenditure that is going to end. And when that expenditure ends, the fee would continue, even though their future expenditures wouldn't go through the same process. So reviewing the record with council and advisors in this specific request where most of the funding is for capital expenses, along with the timelines to ensure necessary funding, I'd like to propose a path forward. I would suggest that we grant the application an increase through February 1st, 2029. Pitkin County demonstrated that in its application documentation for capital plan from 24 to 28, in line with the statute, the increase we approved today based on that capital plan would allow for the requested increase as demonstrated, but strike a balance in not having an indefinite increase where most of these costs are for a fixed capital expenditure. I'd like to be clear, and Ms. McLaughlin and Mr. Branson can help with the language in the order, that Pitkin County is not precluded from coming in for continued or further increases. Granting this request through February 21st, 2029 is supported by the capital plan presented in the application and also allows Pitkin County sufficient time to provide an application if needed, including by October of 2028, to continue any further capital or operational costs that would be needed after that time.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a helpful elaboration on what we discussed last week in concerns where we have a very high amount going to capital expenses, especially in this circumstance, a very significant increase. So that sounds like a reasonable path forward to me, and I'd be happy to support your amendment to Mr. Branson's recommendation.
As would I. It's again, it's a big increase, a doubling, and as both my colleagues said, it's mainly for capital. So it seems like a reasonable approach to put a check-in point 5 or 6 years out. So with that, are you okay with an ABC decision, or would you like to see more?
No, I think an ABC would be great.
You're good with that. So Mr. Branson, that can be an ABC decision deeming the application complete and granting it subject to the comments and this discussion.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you. Proposed amendments to commission rules regarding basic emergency service outages. Mr. Branson, got 3 today.
I do. I hope you don't get sick of me.
So far, so good.
That's good to hear.
We'll keep you posted.
New 911 rules went into effect on March 30th of this year. As adopted by the Commission in Decision R22-0811. Since the adoption of these rules, there have been numerous conversations between Commission staff and the state's only basic emergency service provider, or BESP, as well as other 911 stakeholders regarding the interpretation of the definition of a basic emergency service outage. More specifically, the BESP, Quest Corporation, doing business as CenturyLink QC, which also does business as Lumen Technologies, has adopted an interpretation of the BES outage that states that outages do not occur if the equipment that is at fault for the outage is also part of systems used by the company to provide end user service. It has also taken the interpretation that if 911 calls can be rerouted to an alternate 911 center, then an outage has not occurred. The difference in interpretation regarding the definition of basic emergency service outage has an impact on whether or not outages are reported by the BESP to commission staff as required by commission rules, and whether billing credits to the impacted local agencies are provided as required under commission rules for outages that meet other criteria. Additionally, the new rules implement a staff-led investigation process for basic emergency service outages that has identified other needs that are not addressed in the rules that became effective in March of this year. It's with this background that this notice of proposed rulemaking before you today was prepared. The purpose of this notice is to, one, clarify the Commission's intent regarding the definition of basic emergency service outage and the related reporting requirements for basic emergency service outages, clarifying that any circumstance in which no 911 calls can be routed to the intended 911 center that serves the customer's area, a basic emergency service outage has occurred. Two, establish a beginning date for the requirement that BESPs update basic information related to their BESP certifications every 2 years. Three, provide direction to BESPs regarding the conduct of repairs or maintenance in order to minimize disruption to 911 service. Four, strengthen the rules regarding the requirement to provide billing credits to governing bodies in the event of outages that meet duration criteria. And five, update terminology and internal references. A pre-notice version of the draft rules was circulated among members and participants with the Commission's 911 Advisory Task Force, which includes representation from the BESP, and a webinar was held to discuss the reason for the draft and to obtain feedback. Much of the feedback received was incorporated into the version of the draft rules that have been provided as an attachment to the draft decision today. So with that, obviously our advisor's recommendation is adopting the draft decision to open a notice of proposed rulemaking consistent with the discussion, setting the matter for a hearing, and referring the matter to an administrative law judge.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Mr. Branson. I agree with your recommendation as well. And just for maybe clarity, I know I went over this with you in my meeting with you, but what is essentially the consequence of a call being rerouted to a different PSAP than the intended kind of local PSAP? Like, what is the real world kind of consequence or implication of that?
Well, rerouting 911 calls to an alternate PSAP is a very important mitigation strategy for reducing the impact of an outage, because the 911 call is still being answered. But if it's being answered by the PSAP that does not normally serve that area, then those two PSAPs have to coordinate with each other. The information from the call has to get to the PSAP that has the ability to dispatch that call. Depending on the circumstance, that may not even be possible, and they may have to find other ways to get first responders dispatched to that location. So it can cause a significant delay in dispatch and response time to emergency situations.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. And as I said, I agree with your recommendation. Thanks for bringing this up so that we can address it.
I likewise agree with your recommendation, and that can be an ABC decision, opening the rulemaking, issuing proposed rules, and referring the matter to an ALJ. So thank you. Mr. Branson, 23M-0210T, allocating remaining funds.
And I won't ask for that update yet. Wendy Rosati is also online, has been our legal counsel on this, and may help answer any legal questions you have about this proceeding. Last year, a mechanism intended to enforce compliance with the Telecommunications Act of 1996, known as the Colorado Performance Assurance Plan, or CPAP, was retired. The termination of the CPAP requirements, however, leaves $1,654,441 in an account that, per the CPAP agreement approved by the Commission, must be distributed by the Commission for competitively neutral efforts in the telecommunications field that do not benefit CenturyLink QC directly. That part was in quotes. In the opening decision to this proceeding, the commission provided a list of proposed uses for the funds that meet the minimum criteria in the CPAP agreement. Comment deadlines were established and commission requested comment on the initial proposed list of uses while also asking for suggestions for use of the funds other than what the commission originally proposed. Comments were received from a number of entities, including a number of different proposals. The commenters specifically were the Colorado Council of Authorities, the Boulder Regional Emergency Telephone Service Authority, the Legislative Committee of the Commission's own 911 Advisory Task Force, the Arapahoe County 911 Authority, the Colorado 911 Resource Center, the Colorado Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind, and the Colorado Office of Future Work, which filed jointly with the Colorado Broadband Office. Following this initial comment cycle, the commission issued decision C-23-0540I, establishing new comment deadlines and calling for comments on the first round of proposals as well as new proposals. Comments in the second round were received from the task force, BRETSA being the Boulder Regional Emergency Telephone Service Authority, and the Colorado Coalition of Authorities. The proceeding received a number of different proposals. Telecom advisors reviewed these proposals with an eye towards ensuring that the funds were being allocated in a manner that was consistent with the requirements of the CPAP agreement, had a clearly defined recipient that was already a formally established entity, preferably a governmental or nonprofit organization, benefited a variety of different stakeholders, including disadvantaged and low-income populations, and had clearly defined uses, preferably with a budget or spending plan. Based on this analysis, advisors recommend allocating funds to the following projects and recipients in the following amounts. $500,000 to the Colorado 911 Resource Center for the purpose of funding GIS dataset development for future next generation 911 deployment, including geospatial routing of 911 calls. $439,054 to the Colorado Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind for a 3-year enhancement of the telecommunications technology program, which provides assistive technology for telecommunications access to persons with disabilities and provides training on how to use this technology. $600,000 to the Colorado Office of Future Work to fund a 3-year program to promote enrollment in a Lifeline and affordable connectivity program, particularly in areas of the state with high eligibility and low enrollment rates, meaning low income populations that are not already taking advantage of these programs. $20,000 to the Colorado Council of Authorities to build that organization's administrative capacity. CCOA is a nonprofit membership organization that represents a little less than half of the local 911 governing bodies in the state. The funds would be used to design a website and develop other administrative processes to provide sustainability for that organization. And then the remainder of the funds, currently $95,387, to the Colorado 911 Resource Center for ongoing operations. The commission actually created the Resource Center in 2006 with funding from another telecom settlement, and that funding is running out. There is currently an effort in the legislature to provide ongoing funding to the Resource Center, but this would provide some stopgap funding. So the draft decision before you today would also require recipients to sign an affidavit promising to use the funding for the purposes described in the proposals provided in comments and return any funding used for those purposes. I also raised 2 additional questions for your discussion today. First, whether the funds should be distributed in a single disbursement to all of the recipients, or if, in the case of the 2 multi-year proposals, they be distributed in annual installments. Second, what, if any, updates should be required from the recipients regarding their use of the funds. Updates could be filed with the commission or published on the recipients' websites. With that, I will pause for your discussion and direction.
Thank you, Mr. Branson. Greatly appreciate the type of process you ran, the public input you received, and the thoughtful nature with which you allocated the funds. In our prior discussions, we talked about allocating the multi-year grants at the beginning of each new year. And it sounds like you're okay with that approach to allocating those funds. It sounded like it from your comments.
I have no opposition to that approach.
Okay. I would prefer to see the multi-year grants at the beginning of each grant year. And I wouldn't mind seeing, a very brief update just for our records, how the spending, how the monies were used. So would you be okay, Commissioner Plant, for those two things?
Yeah, I support that. I think it's good to, in the event that something happens in the intervening time, some, entity goes out of business or something happens, that would allow us to make sure that those funds are going appropriately to the right place. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Commissioner Gellman.
Yeah, and Mr. Branson, within the process, as I understand, I think there were essentially annual spending plans associated with the requests, or was it lump sum requests?
So 3 of the projects are lump sum. 2 of them were multi-year projects spanning 3 years.
Okay, so it would just be the 2 that were the multi-year, the lump sums would still be doled out in that way. Okay, and I presume there is some process where they could come to us if for some reason it appears advantageous to adjust their intended spending scheme so that we can adjust as needed. If we went with only the annual for the multi-year plans, like I don't want to kind of handcuff someone where it's not necessary. We've already determined these are appropriate uses. So just some assurance that there is some process that could be used so that we're not unnecessarily setting up barriers if the funding should be adjusted.
I will refer that question to Commission Counsel as to what the process would be if there's one that we could use for that.
I think Commissioner Erin McLaughlin, Commission Counsel, and Commissioner, I appreciate that question. I was going to ask a clarifying question for this order is whether you would like those disbursements on equal parts for those 2 programs that are annual. So for example, with 600,000, it would be 200,000 each year. If that is what your intention is, like this order could make clear that that's the intent. Their budgets are different in ways that would align best with their original proposals. And I think that would be the opportunity for them to come back to the commission to ask for a different allocation, given your interests today and making sure that it's an ongoing disbursement for the reasons Commissioner Plant and Chair Blank have discussed today.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way to proceed. So if those entities either have a necessity to have this not be kind of even as it is, or think that they have really good reasoning why they need that flexibility in the future, that's something we could see in R and really evaluate their perspective then. Okay.
And if I could suggest, the 2 entities that had 3-year programs, the one from the Colorado Office of Future Work would be easy to break up evenly because they asked for $200,000 per year. The one for the Colorado Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deaf Blind had a number of expenses that they would need to pay up front and then other expenses that could be spread out over 3 years. So it would be, I think, most convenient and practical if we could write the order for both that is in a way that is consistent in the distributions with the spending plan that they provided in their comments.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's helpful. Helpful clarification to the suggestion.
And I'd be good with that approach, Commissioner Plant. I agree. So that can be an ABC decision allocating the CPAP funds consistent with this discussion, and no update required, Mr. Branson. Well done.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Thank you, sir.
And thanks for your leadership. Proceeding number 22A-0230E, Black Hills, Colorado Electric Resource Plan and Clean Energy Plan. Mr. Eden.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Michael Eden with your advisory staff.
Oh, I'm Michael Eden with your advisory staff. I'm not used to all this technology. This morning, I'll be presenting for your consideration an unopposed motion for extension of time that Black Hills, Colorado Electric filed on November 20th, 2023 regarding its 2022 Electric Resource Plan and Clean Energy Plan, or ERP and CEP. So for the benefit of the listening public, I'll start with some background. Back in March of 2023, the Commission issued its Phase 1 decision approving with modifications the unanimous comprehensive settlement agreement regarding Black Hills 2022 ERP and CEP. Among other things, this Phase 1 decision directed Black Hills to issue the requests for proposals, or RFPs, for an all-source competitive bidding process to fill the company's projected resource need and meet Colorado's clean air targets. Black Hills subsequently issued the RFPs, and in response, the company received approximately 115 potential bids. Black Hills states that this is the largest number of bids the company has ever received in response to any solicitation. Now, under the Commission's ERP rules, the receipt of the bids sets the timeline for several Phase 2 events, including when the company must notify bidders of whether their bids were advanced to computer-based modeling, and when the company must file the 120-day report. In this case, the rules require Black Hills to notify bidders by December 4th and file the 120-day report by February 17th. This brings us to the unopposed motion. Due to the volume of bids and scope of review, the company requests an additional 15 days to conduct eligibility reviews, due diligence, and economic screening before it notifies bidders of advancement to computer-based modeling. This would move the deadline to notify bidders from December 4th to December 19th. Similarly, Black Hills argues that because of the robust response, there is insufficient time to develop the portfolios and other information required by the Phase 1 decision for the 120-day report. Accordingly, the company requests an additional 60 days to file the 120-day report, moving the deadline from February 17th to April 17th. Noting that several Phase 2 deadlines are based on when the bidders are notified and the filing of the 120-day report, the company requests that these other Phase 2 deadlines be extended as well, and that the Commission grant the necessary partial waivers of the ERP rules. And finally, Black Hills asks that the Commission waive a response time to the unopposed motion. So the decision before you today is just whether to grant the unopposed motion. I have a recommendation, but I'll pause first for any discussion or questions.
Now, if you can give your recommendation, that'd be great.
Sure. Advisors recommend that the Commission grant the unopposed motion and the requested partial waivers of the Commission's ERP rules. Given the robust response to the company's RFPs and the requirements of Phase 2, the company has established good cause for the extension. For clarity, advisors recommend that the Commission extend any deadline that flows from the bidder notification or the filing of the 120-day report, consistent with the requested extensions. This would include those deadlines not set forth in the Commission's rules, like the deadline for the Phase 2 emission verification report from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And finally, we recommend that the Commission grant or waive the response time to the unopposed motion.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I, and I will continue my advocacy to rename the 120-day report to something different because we don't seem able to hit that deadline. So that can be an ABC decision granting the motion and a waiver of response time. So thank you, Mr. Eden.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 23A-0392EG, Ms. Dundas, Public Service Company of Colorado, Clean Heat Plan.
I think we should just write this one on the agenda in pen every week since it seems to come up every week. But good morning, commissioners. I'm Lindsay Dundas of your commission counsel. For this week, Public Service made a filing in the Clean Heat Plan proceeding on November 16th, in which the company seeks clarification regarding the finality of decision number C230729, or in the alternative, the company requests RRR of that decision to clarify that the decision was an interim decision and not a final commission decision. Decision number C-230729 was the commission's decision denying the motion for summary judgment regarding inclusion of certified natural gas and offsets in the company's preferred portfolio. It also provided the parties with guidance as to the commission's understanding of inclusion of non-enumerated clean heat resources. The commission did not mark the decision with an I for interim and also did not include language indicating a deadline for RRR. Public service requests the commission clarify that the decision is an interim decision of the commission, or in the alternative, grant the RRR for this limited purpose. The company indicates that it's necessary to do this so that the parties are all on the same page, that the decision is not appealable in civil litigation or through RRR at this time, but that RRR to this decision should wait until the conclusion of the proceeding. The commission did not receive any other RRR filings related to this decision, nor has the commission received an appeal of that decision to the best of my knowledge. I have a recommendation of how to handle this filing, or I can pause here for your discussion.
Yeah, if you can give your recommendation, that'd be great.
I recommend treating this as a request or motion for clarification and not a RRR application. I also recommend granting the company's request for clarification and stating that this is an interim commission decision. If you agree, we'll issue a short clarifying order designating decision number C-230729 as an interim decision.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision providing that clarification.
Thank you, commissioners.
So thank you, Ms. Dundas, and hopefully maybe see you next week. With that, I think that concludes our agenda. Commissioner Plant, any final comments, thoughts?
No, good to see you all in person.
Commissioner Gilman.
Likewise, and thank you, everyone.
Yep. Nice seeing everybody. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.